All right. So this is I think it's episode 20. Let me check really quick. Let's see.
We're rolling on dubs.
This is episode 19, almost
Nice.
20. So this is my fourth interview ever on this podcast, the Brain Dump podcast. This is my really good friend Gianni Magna.
Woo
Um,
woo.
yeah, we did a couple comedy shows together. We met in San Francisco, and yeah, well, welcome to the podcast
Thank you. So glad to be here. Glad to have an opportunity to dump the brain.
for sure. It's necessary. So what like I guess just tell me like what do you a bit about yourself and like what you've been up to like recently
Yeah,
right now.
so I moved to LA in October and I've been doing stand-up comedy since I started college in San Francisco when I was like 17 as a freshman, like sneaking into bars when like I wasn't allowed there. But if they know that you're on the show, then they don't ask questions was like a really convenient workaround for me. So I was able to start
Yeah.
stand-up pretty early when I was in film school at San Francisco State University, which I know you also went to.
Hmm.
Even though I think that I didn't know you until I was pretty close to graduating and you'd already graduated from there,
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
passing like ships in the night, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I've been in LA now, graduated from the bachelor's at SF State. I spent the last semester of my BA in Zoom school, and I don't think I
For
could have
sure.
tolerated any longer than one semester of that. I left San Francisco because I couldn't go to class in person. It didn't make sense to pay rent out there. Moved back in with my folks in Napa Valley, not too
Mm,
far out in the Bay Area, and wrote out the rest of the semester just like trying to keep it together, like barely scraped by. My professors were so forgiving with
that's good.
how absolutely lethargic and depressive and self-flagellating and like self-sabotaging I was near the end of that. I was able to form, it was for a film degree in theory, not film theory, but it's like I think it's only nominally a film degree because it's like my bachelor says cinema on it, but like I think that
Oh,
i,
I see.
I accidentally did a film studies program because there was actually very little on-set experience or like operating cameras or technical equipment or like
I see.
writing or directing taking place in the course load in the curriculum. And I was able to complete a thesis film, but it wasn't the thesis film that I wrote to shoot in the thesis class my last semester of the degree. It was it was like a documentary that my
Hmm.
thesis class was still meeting over Zoom, and we were all like, "Hey, we can't make this. We can't make our films." And my
Oh yeah.
professor was like, "Well, you still got to turn something in for this
Oh shit.
class, so figure something out. You have to rewrite from scratch, make do with what you got. Unlimited
Hmm.
resources." So I and probably everyone else that didn't have a better camera was just shooting on an iPhone, and I submitted like a documentary piece that was actually a lot more true to form for me, coming from stand-up comedy where it was just sort of like me talking as myself to the camera kind of, or like voicing over footage of whatever else about my life and just like trying to make sense of like, who am I, how did I become this person, why am I like this, and that was the title of the film, is why am I like this. And
Oh,
that
that's really
was,
cool.
yeah, and I graduated summer of last year, summer of 2020,
Hmm.
first semester of Zoom college alumni, and I would love to get a college text like pullover that just says like Zoom school or something like that, or like Zoom University, like in the Ivy League font. It would be so funny.
Yeah, that's
Or
so
even
like
if it,
universal.
yeah, even if it were like the SF State colors, it's kind of like that college font hoodie or like pullover that just says Kale on it in the college
Yeah,
font.
with like a gator under it or something.
Yeah, that would be super
Yeah,
cool. The
that'd be
purple
tight.
and gold SF State colors, and it just says Zoom University or Zoom School. Yeah,
Hmm.
and then after the summer, after I graduated in 2020, end of 2020, I somehow got it together. I mean, really, like thanks to unemployment, I guess I was able to move out to LA with our
Cool.
mutual friend Jake, who introduced me to you initially when we were all living in San Francisco just before the lockdown.
I
Was when
remember
you and I
that.
first met. Yeah. And so now him and I live out here, and ever since we knew we were going to be living together, we had planned, because he has been making YouTube videos and independent productions that he's been writing and directing with his friends from San Diego from around the time that you and him met. Like his friends from his theater program in San Diego that you know all these people, and they've been
Yeah, most of
making
them, yeah.
totally, and they've been making really awesome, really funny, totally unique in terms of tone and like authorial voice. He's a total auteur, my roommate Jake, and we knew that as soon as we were going to live together, like we got to shoot our own stuff and make some kind of like independent short film happen. And we decided to develop one of the scripts that he had called The Last Roommate into a web series. And we wrote you in to be like the third character, even though there's only 2 bedrooms in our apartment. So like eventually the very attentive viewer who watches enough episodes
Oh, I
will
see.
eventually notice that where was
Where
Jake
is he
living?
living?
It doesn't even make sense. Yeah. So in the fictional universe, we all play ourselves and we all have our real names. In the Last Roommate universe, the 3 of us are roommates, but in reality, me and Jake are writing the show, and then we call you over to play yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a little over,
Yeah.
I think, half the episodes shot now, and so we're
Okay.
hoping definitely like this year, maybe by like summer, we'll be like before the end of summer, we'll be able to start releasing these, and
Mhm.
your audience can see you act as yourself. It'll be super cool.
Yeah. So we're on what do we have to do next? Like episode 5, I think.
Yeah, definitely. There's
Yeah.
an episode that sort of talks about, and I don't want to give too much away, but there's an
Yeah,
episode that
don't give
talks
too much
about,
away.
right, the way that like in lockdown, which is slowly ending here in LA, finally, it's just the process of like losing all social etiquette and just forgetting like how to be a person and how to interact with people. And because you of the 3 roommates are the only one of us who actually has a job outside and like a girlfriend and like has any sort of life outside of just like staying in the apartment and like avoiding like being around people at all, you've been kind of out in the world like way more than the 2 of us relatively. So you actually retained a sort of social etiquette and a knowledge of like how to interact with people and be a normal person. And so you have to teach us as like a life coach how to be normal guys again before we go back out into the world.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, that's going to be the next thing that we shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so excited for this. Like, I feel like this is giving me an opportunity to act where like there was none before. So I'm like really grateful.
We've had to create our own opportunities. Like if it were up to me and what I had planned to do right after graduating is just move down here to LA like as fast as I could and just be going to auditions immediately.
Yeah.
That's not really happening in person. Like that's all like self-taped from home. So I've been able to have some exposure to that process, but more from the end of like helping an actor film his self-tape auditions in my ongoing process of like seeking representation for myself so that I can start eventually submitting my own.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure that's helping you like learn and just become comfortable with auditioning.
Yeah, it's been a really amazing educational experience, like helping with self-tapes. And the first time that I helped an actor make a self-tape, you know, reading the lines for all the other characters that they're not auditioning for from behind the camera and hitting record, setting up the shot and everything. That's really my only role in the process of filming the self-tape. The first time I did it was at the New School at Parsons in New York, the like private art school and performing arts school. And it was a Italian actress who has the same acting coach as me. And he got us in touch. Like, hey, I've helped this girl with her auditions and with questions that she had about acting. And I know that you're starting out in acting. I was doing like a lot of stand-up comedy a year that I took off of school when I was living in New York, working in a coffee shop and going to stand-up open mics. And our mutual acting coach got us in touch and we totally hit it off. And it was so funny because like, she's like, I was helping her do her self-tape. And from there, I really wanted her to go to a stand-up open mic and she really wanted to too, but she didn't feel in any way ready to do it. And it was so funny that like, I don't have any real acting training aside from like UCB improv classes and like sketch. Okay. And she's like worked in stuff in like Rome where she's from. And she felt like, oh my gosh, you just get on stage and you can do comedy and speak as yourself. And you're just so unafraid to be in a room full of people and talking to a microphone. That's amazing. I could never do that. And it was so disorienting. Like, you think I'm further ahead than you, I just like talk shit for like 3 minutes at a time about stuff that just like
Yeah,
makes people uncomfortable that I'm even talking about it. Like that's really not that impressive. And eventually I did get her to try it, and she totally knocked it out of the park at an open mic that I brought her to
nice.
at the Creek in the Cave in Brooklyn, which is just closed during the pandemic. And nobody believed it was her first time doing
That's
comedy.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we do that so much as artists. Like we think we're awful, and then the other person who we're with, the other artist, thinks they're awful.
We're
And then
writing the
we're like, oh my
rules.
God, you're so good. And then it's like, no, I'm so bad. No, you're the good one. And it's just like,
All of these
that happens
decisions
all the
that,
time.
yeah, all of these decisions that you see people, and everyone does it, all these decisions that we constantly make about what we can't do, what we can't try, what is totally something that I could never do that. That's us writing the rules for ourselves. And as soon as you acknowledge it, like you've created that reality. Like you've scripted that for yourself that like I can do this and I can't do this and I could never try that. As soon as you realize that you're the one in control behind that, like there are steps you can take to break down those barriers because you're the one that put them up in the first place.
That's right. Yeah. And it took me a long time to get that because like I was not a good student like in high school. I had like a really shitty GPA. Like I
Oh,
hated
I
school.
wouldn't have guessed that at
And
all
like
because you seem like a really focused guy.
yeah, I feel like now it's like I'm different, I guess, but I still have that underlying insecurity from having a low GPA and like that trauma, I guess, or like trauma or whatever. It's not really trauma, but it's just like
But it
a
affects the way you
standard
view
that
yourself.
exactly, yeah. And I deal with that like underneath the surface sometimes. So like when someone criticizes me about something, I'll be like, oh, it's because like I'm internally like I am
Knew
stupid.
it.
Like I am stupid.
I always knew it.
Yeah, and it's like not true, but I'm like so I'm like trying to learn how to like just be easier on myself and just and stop ranking people based on like what I think they can do or like
This is something that
compared
I've
to
been
me
talking
and
about
shit.
with like a friend of mine constantly because like I mean, I don't want to put his bullshit with his friend on blast, but basically he keeps running into issues that end up burning bridges in his friendships, where what it really comes down to is that like the other guy in the situation is he drives himself insane by comparing himself to whatever other mediocre guy that he decides he'll never be as impressive as.
Mm.
And it poisons his mind. It conditions the way that he views himself in every situation. And it's like, if it's totally a losing battle when your perception of yourself is only relative to whatever other person outside of you you're comparing yourself to. Like I think Hemingway has some kind of quote about that. Like there is no value to ever, or maybe F. Scott Fitzgerald, there's no value to ever be gleaned from comparing yourself to somebody else. There is only success to be acknowledged from comparing yourself to yourself, comparing yourself to
I
the old
see.
you. And I'm trying to RIP the old me every day because
Every day.
that's all that we can do. That's the only reliable measurement,
Yeah, yourself, like yourself yesterday and yeah, it's true. That's the only reliable like because like people have different goals, like they're just different, they're like built different
Everyone's
and
on their
like
own path, and it's like
yeah.
in the movie Mid '90s that Jonah Hill directed, the like skater. It's like kids, like Army
Oh
Karen
yeah, I've
kids, but
seen
it's
half of
all
that
skaters.
movie.
It's really good, but like deeply dark and like will mess you up emotionally if you watch it. So I highly recommend it to people who are ready to take that on. But yeah, Nakel Smith's character in that movie has some kind of line like, "You think everybody has it better than you, but if you look at the shit in their closet, you wouldn't trade your shit for their shit. Like whatever guy you're convinced that like you're dumb or you're ugly or you're untalented relative to, you have no idea what that person's drastically overcompensating for or like what they had to overcome to get to whatever you think comes so easily to them.
Yeah.
You don't want that guy's problems,
Yeah, and yeah, like that's true. Like we're all on our own path and like especially with art, like being an artist, it's like I feel like it's like hyper more than like people who, aren't creative or like aren't doing like something creative. Like when you're creative, it's like it's so hyper like exacerbated where we're always like comparing every little thing like because we can put our art outside of ourselves and we're comparing our art to someone else's art and we'll compare the art like it's us and we'll be like
People are so deeply identified with their
Yeah.
stuff that if they have any reason to believe that their work is not as valuable as whatever guy, it's easy to take it really personally. And also
Mhm.
with art, there's no linear metric, you know? Like if you're a salesman and you're making six figures, you can really feel like I'm done. I did it. I've made it.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's always going to be some guy that's making more money than you or like sold more cars than you to aspire to. But like with art, it's quote unquote never about the money. So there's no real place to get to where you feel like you've made it. Like that material success will never satisfy you. Like it's an infinite hunger. It's an infinite appetite that will never be satisfied. Like that sort of fulfillment in the sense of achievement will only come from like immaterial fulfillment, like stuff that you can't put a price on, like caring for a loved one or
Mhm.
getting something out that you needed so badly to express. It's
Totally.
not like the price tag that's going to tell you like, and it was good and it was worth it and you're done now and you're a good person and you're talented. Like nothing's ever gonna, no material measurement outside of you is ever going to truly determine that. Like, I mean, Paul McCartney is, he has the most profound imposter syndrome out of like anybody on his level. But I feel like on some level, in some way, everybody who is as achieved as him must be not totally convinced of themselves. And if they are truly convinced that they are what people think they become psychotic.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, that's so crazy. I feel like it's like, especially like the keyword is like outside yourself, because like the price tags, the Gucci, like whatever, the car or whatever, it's all made up by other people. That shit could all like disappear, or like someday that shit could like lose all of its value, like all of a sudden. And it's
Yeah,
like,
like
what
what
have
was
you
that
done?
senator that
Right?
was like there was a photograph of him taken on a golf course and it was some like Republican representative and he was wearing like
Mhm.
Balmain jeans.
I don't know. I know
You
what
know
you're
about
talking
this?
about,
Yeah,
but
it's like
I
some
don't know
ridiculous
who it
photo.
was.
And like
Yeah.
he thinks he's stunning. You know what I mean? Like he thought he was showing up at the golf course like nobody's gonna have pants with all these fucking zippers and like knee pads and like motorcycle styles on
Yeah.
them. It's like, oh, it's like designer YSL denim, but it's khakis, but I'm golfing. Like he thinks that he's like
Hmm.
4D chess, like 5 steps ahead of everybody else in the golf course. And if the only person you have to compare yourself to is like other middle-aged Republican
Golfers.
guys who show up golfing, then like, yeah, it's easy to stunt. But as soon as that picture gets posted
Oh my
online, it's
God.
like, you spent how much to look like that? You're a clown, dude. And like,
It
yeah,
looks funny, dude.
yeah, it looks so dumb. And it's like, that guy really thought that that was going to be like a measure of success, like a measure of achievement, or like a stunt,
Or
like
like I'm avant-garde. Like,
for real. Yeah,
yeah.
and you only need to expose that to a wider audience for it to be so obviously revealed, like undeniable. Like everybody agrees that he looks ridiculous, you know. And he
Yeah,
thought that
that's
he had made it by
hilarious.
like showing up in those expensive pants.
Yeah, it's crazy how memes get made though, right?
Yes, you know, I had to do it to him. I mean, just off the top of my head, like,
Exactly.
what is that guy up to? Like, is he still getting fits off?
He might be.
Yeah, like
He might be like, oh, if they're talking bad about me, like that's fake news. Like I'm still gonna stun.
I'm still that guy that did it to him.
Yeah, and that's he's high, like riding off of that.
Yeah, he's gonna rest on his laurels his whole life. Like, it's his go-to like bullet points that he touches on a first date. Like, hey, I know it's like kind of weird, but you
Yeah,
ever heard of I had to do it to him? Well, and then you look down at his
I
hands
did it
folded
to
in that
him.
way. Yeah, I'm the guy that did it to him. Pretty cool, right? I mean, it's not really a big deal or anything. Yeah, he's probably going to
Yeah,
bring that up like in every conversation where he's ever trying to impress someone,
for sure.
and
Because
rightfully
then,
so. I
yeah,
mean, it was a legendary drop, like that pick.
it was. It might come back around to actually be cool, like in a dad way.
I think that we're there. I think that
Like,
we've actually reached that full circle zenith. I mean, if you look at what like Tyler the Creator is doing, I think like
mhm.
there is a way to age up in streetwear in a mature way that like takes into account your like coming into full adulthood and like reaching a new level of maturity while also staying true to like your aesthetic roots and the stuff that like got you inspired as a kid first getting into streetwear, but like not insisting on like Dickies and Vans every single day when it's like you haven't
Yeah,
picked up a skateboard in 3 years because you're fucking 30 years old or whatever. Like there's a path, you know. Zach Fox, another great example of that. He's getting the dad fits off like nobody's business. Like what is that line? Like show up to the cookout looking like your uncle or some shit.
Yeah, something like that.
Bro, I hope he hears this, low key.
Yeah, with like the sandals or something.
He's not gonna hear
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you never know.
That's a dream guest though for a podcast, right?
Yeah, that is the dream
we've
guest.
literally had this exact conversation. Like, bro, now that we live in LA, we gotta find a way to hang out with Zach.
Yeah, we're gonna find him. I heard like Brandon Wardell lives in LA too. Like a lot of these people live in LA. Like,
Brandon like
crazy.
knows you.
yeah,
He's totally gonna remember you from the DM conversation.
Yeah, I haven't talked to him in person, but I've like DM'd him, and we've had like a few short conversations.
I bet he would remember you. Like if you ran into him
Yeah,
in
he
person,
would.
no doubt.
Because
So
like
you're already making connections.
yeah, because like almost no one looks like me too. So like I feel like he'd
Facts.
like remember.
Yeah, like
But yeah.
yeah, there were actually, when we watched the first episode of The Last Roommate on the big projector in the living room here, there were certain moments where like seeing your face like shot really well with like color correction and like lighting effects and like post-production. And this is before we got the even better iPhone camera. Like don't get me wrong, listeners at home, we've been shooting on iPhone this entire time. But the first episode, we had an earlier generation of iPhone where it's like, it even just with that, like iPhone 8 or whatever, there are certain shots where seeing you like blown up the size of our entire living room wall on the projector, it's
That's
like,
crazy.
damn, like this is beautiful. Like Ron could be on a billboard. Like Ron could be that guy. Like I totally see that. You gotta capitalize on the look.
Yeah, because I don't see that for myself all the time. Like sometimes I'm like looking in the mirror, I'm like, I look really fucking weird.
Everyone feels that way,
like,
you know?
What I mean? Yeah. So that's nice to hear that, like for sure.
It's so hard to know what you look like. I think because we all have such a distorted perspective of our own appearance.
Yeah.
And we carry around like the worst we've ever looked. Like we see ourselves every day and we still see that, you know?
Yeah, or like certain features, or like you ever like, you know, like you take a picture and it like flips and you're just like, oh shit, like.
Or that trend on TikTok where it flips the picture so fast that you really see the asymmetry in your face.
Yeah.
I've been noticing like my jaw is disproportionately developed on one side. Like it's not up for debate.
Tell.
I know. And I usually can't tell, but there are certain photos of lighting and angles that do bring it out. And I know why. Like I don't know what the name of the condition is, but I think that I have some kind of connective tissue disorder where like I can just locate certain joints. And it doesn't necessarily hurt, but it's also not super comfortable. And I can only do it on one side of my jaw. So I know that the musculature on one side of my jaw is like
different,
being worked out in an asymmetrical way. I don't really know what to do about it. But you know, it's a look, I guess. Like,
yeah.
Who even has an asymmetrical face?
Yeah, I feel like because I feel like I have like a similar thing. And then I'm just like sometimes I feel like my eyes will be like if I look and stare at myself, like my eyes look like they're like this. Or like
you see your eyes floating out of place.
Yeah, I'm just like, what the heck? And like, I don't know. It's just weird. Or like sometimes I'll like look at my nose. I'll just be like, this is like huge. Like, what the fuck? Like,
how is anyone okay with this? How does nobody bring this to my attention? How does this not come up every conversation I have? Yeah, I totally relate.
Yeah, but then like you have those days like every so often, like maybe like 1 in 20, where you're just like, I look really fucking good.
But sometimes you also just got to be Italian about it. You got to be like, yeah, dude, I have a big nose.
I know, right?
That's like my culture. What do you want?
Yeah, for real. Like I've been researching, like speaking of like the Italian thing, I've been like researching on like how you could get like American people can get Italian citizenship like by descent.
That is the way.
It's fucking cool. Like if you have a great grandparent or whatever that like came to America and they didn't naturalize, or they naturalized after they gave birth to like their son, like let's say like your great grandpa came over from like Italy to like the US and then he had a kid while he was still an Italian citizen. That kid is an Italian citizen. And then
therefore
dad is an Italian citizen, and then I am. But you have to prove it. You have to go to the consulate and just be like, okay, here's his birth certificate. Here's the date showing that he naturalized after he gave birth.
Wow, that would be an
And then
entire like national treasure steal the Declaration of
yeah,
Independence quest to try to get my
yeah.
great grandfather's birth certificate. To
That's
wow,
like
yeah.
sort of what I'm trying to do, which is sort of difficult.
There's got to be. Oh, I think I could do it. Like, there's got to be a way, and
Yeah,
it would be so
it's
worth it, you know?
hard. It's
Yeah,
hard because okay, Italy is in the EU.
yeah.
You can get access to working in the EU,
You can live anywhere at that
living in
point,
the EU.
basically.
You don't even have to go to Italy. You can get the citizenship, get the passport, and you don't have any obligation to do anything there.
They don't even want you to go there. They just want you to
It's
say
like,
you're Italian other
yeah,
places. They just want you to rep it.
exactly. It's like the biggest like flex.
I wonder if
Not
that
that I'm
works for like.
intending it to be like that, but I just feel like
Yeah, I think
that's
there's a lot of
cool.
opportunities that way. Have you ever tried to learn a foreign language?
I took French, I took Japanese,
Cool.
and I took like 1 year of Spanish. So I know a little bit of like all of those, but probably more French and Japanese. I just know a little Spanish just from hearing it. But yeah, I don't know too much though, but I'm sort of like beginner at
Do
like
you think
those
if you
languages.
lived
So
in a foreign country, you could pick it up?
I feel like I would. I feel like it would definitely take like some studying, like just at home and stuff. But
For
I feel
sure.
like eventually I would. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting Italian citizenship takes all the bumpers off of like how long you can legally stay in France or like Spain or whatever. Stay there
Yeah.
long enough to be able to learn the language. And then even if you don't intend to stay, you come back to the US or wherever you decide you want to live and you always have that under your belt, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I'm
Especially
trying
if you
to,
want to continue
yeah,
to live in LA. Like knowing Spanish is a huge asset. And
for
Japanese and
sure.
French, honestly. Like I mean, I'm surprised how many French people I meet living out here.
Oh, okay, really? Yeah. I haven't
Yeah,
met
like
too
there's a
many,
bakery right
but
in my neighborhood, and sometimes I'll
nice.
just like hear people like on the tables outside, like talking. Like I don't even know if it's like one of the owners or just a French person who knows about this in the neighborhood. I'll hear them talking French, and I'm just like, bonjour, keep walking.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Like I'm with it. I'm in the community.
Nice.
Something that I used to do in New York a couple
Yeah.
times is like language exchange meetups, like the app Meetup.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like it's for people of all levels. So I would just go to like, for example, like a champagne bar like off Times Square, and that night, like pretty much like half of the venue would be basically rented out by this group of just people trying to meet up to have conversations in French, or French people and French tourists looking for opportunities to practice English, people who know enough French to like have some grace. I just bumped the mic. And yeah, it was really cool. Like I met this couple from Rennes, I think,
Hmm.
and they like took me out to Korean food like the night after with this guy Walter that was also in the French exchange group, and they paid for everything. It was so lit. Like they were so psyched just to be able to hang out with like an American who was like down to
That's
get in a
cool.
language
Yeah.
exchange. I checked out their hotel room. It was like super high up, like right near Times Square. It was an amazing view that like even living in New York, I would not have had access to that view had I not like gotten in the hotel or known somebody who had a room.
For sure. Yeah, dude, language exchange. I used to go to a little bit like with Japanese, like when I was taking Japanese, I would like go, and it was really cool. I went to like a Korean one a few times. That was like
Sugoi
when I was,
this.
yeah, that was when I was living in San Diego.
Nice. Are there a lot of opportunities to practice Japanese in San Diego?
Yeah, there were a lot. Just because I was going to like Mesa like community college, and then I was in Japanese, and like there was like a Japanese meetup like that was really close to the college. I would happen like I think it was like every Tuesday or something, and it was like there were tons of like exchange students like from Japan, so it was like really cool.
Yeah, I'd love to get in with something like that. I mean, especially now that like more people are vaccinated, I gotta jump on the Meetup app and be looking for some French, German, Spanish, just like get in and just try not to break, try not to default to English.
Yeah,
Explain
just
yourself in baby talk. If the word doesn't occur to you, like explain the word that you're looking for, circumvent to get the idea across.
yeah, just try because I feel like so much language speaking is like so it's just like confidence. Like you just have to like believe in yourself that
It's
like you know
all
what you're talking
confidence.
about and like
Totally. Like
yeah,
people think that I'm a native speaker of French. I do not consider myself to be like even
that's hard.
I don't even think that I'm good enough at French to like apply for a job, like where I would be required to speak it really. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I can fake it just because there are like little cues and like ticks and um, like filler words.
That
Learning
are
filler
native.
words yeah, that really make people believe that you're native. It's just like little cues
Cool.
that just sound very French to do, and they're not even words, you know. And I think every language has this. And I've read like language immersion blogs about this. Every language has filler words and like words that you like in English, like and If if a French speaker is learning English and whenever they can't think of a word, they go buh, you know what I mean? You can tell that their English isn't that advanced, but if whenever they're not able to think of a word, they say like um
Then
it's
it's like,
like you're like,
yeah,
oh, he's right about to get it. He's like right there. Because he stops and thinks the way that you or me stop and think in English, and you can get that across to people. You can fake it in any other language, you know, and that's how you like cue people into thinking that you're better at the language than you really are.
that's a good point.
And then you're convinced
That's
that
a
you're
good
better at the
point.
language than you really are, and then you like stick with it longer, and you're unlocking these deeper recesses of
You like snowball.
yeah, you're unlocking deeper recesses of like vocabulary memory of like if you had lost confidence and like slipped off the tightrope, you're going to convince yourself that you don't remember stuff that you actually do.
That's true. I felt that, like, in the zone, like when I was in those conversations, I would like wait, I would like lose confidence and be like, whoa, like I totally knew that. Like I totally knew that. I just like was freaking out,
Yeah, like I get really rusty,
self-conscious.
and then when I get back into a conversation, I'm like, oh man, I'm just like slipping it. I'm like, I'm totally at like a preschool level of vocabulary or like, you know, 3-year-old. But when you're really in it and like you get the snowball effect and like you really get the momentum up, it's always surprising me how quickly it can come back. Like when I visited France when I was living in Germany, I think that, you know, barely even taking French classes when I was living in Germany for a year, not having really had a lot of opportunities to practice it, not having people to practice it really where I lived, just from staying there even like a week or something, I think that I got to a higher level of French than I'd ever been before, even when I like lived in France for the months in high school where I was in an exchange program there.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I thought that I totally lost it, you know, over years of not practicing, but it's like riding a bike. It really does come back.
For sure. That's good to hear. Like, did you, I was curious about like your time in Europe and like when did you first go to Europe? I guess was it like the exchange program or?
Yeah, like my senior year of high school, I did a semester abroad the first semester of my senior year, and actually a little bit more than that. Like I came back about a month or two into the second semester of my senior year, and they didn't even like make me do the homework for the stuff that I missed. They were just like, "Oh, you get it.
Okay.
We won't. We'll just give you credit for that stuff that month. No makeup." I still flailed a little bit that semester just because like I came back and I was like, I'm so beyond this shit. This is useless. American education system's a joke. High school diploma isn't even respected internationally. You know, I
Mhm.
was like so in my head about it, but eventually I was able to pass American high school and then like go on to university. The first semester senior year though, I was living in France and I did like they have different tracks for high school in like lycée, the like French equivalent of high school,
Mhm.
to prepare you for either college or different areas of professional study.
Also, they sort of start early preparing you there, whereas here it's like you just general for everyone high school.
Yeah, like it's really interesting and like I can't speak to how effective it is. Like, I don't really know if it's doing anybody any favors. Like, for how many years of education in the US, the education is so general and homogenized and like completely the same for everybody, regardless of your skill set or your individual interests. All of the high school curriculum is the exact same requirements for everybody across the board, even if like you declare, like, I'm taking these AP English classes and I'm learning French and I'm learning Spanish. Can you like chill about me not knowing algebra? Like, can that just be fine? Because
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not fine. Like you have to
It's like
take this.
no, like
Yeah, you have to take the same math and science requirements as anybody who's specializing in like engineering and stuff for all of US high school. And then the first like 2, maybe 3 years of most all colleges, especially at the JC or like bachelor's, like you have to take general education regardless of what you're studying. And certain universities have a better way of integrating that with individual programs of study.
yeah,
But in general, like especially at state schools, like you really have to take the same
general
classes that
eds.
everyone else takes.
Yeah.
And I think that it holds a lot of people back from wherever school could have got them, like whatever they had the potential to do, they feel like it's completely inaccessible to them because they can't pass math or they're not good at writing or they're dyslexic or like whatever, you
For
know?
sure. Like I feel like I agree. Like I feel like the first 2 years of university were just like high school two, and then
For
the
real.
second 2 year were like actually my major. You
Yeah,
know?
and it's so expensive. It's like, yeah, they do such a great job of convincing you that you're wasting your time that like they're really
Yeah.
trying to scare people off. It seems like they don't want you to graduate college, major
Oh my
Keeler.
god.
Yeah. Whereas in France and in most like quote unquote developed quote unquote first world country, that's totally colonialized language, you know. But in most of the developed world, their public education system operates along these similar lines of you choose a track pretty early on, like maybe like seventh grade or earlier, of like I have strength in languages. So let's absolutely minimize the math and science requirements because that's
Yeah.
only going to hold me back from reaching my potential of like the best school that I can get into or the most fulfilling education where I could perform the best in. Like it's just gonna make me look bad. It just makes the students look bad to like tell all the kids that are the most adored in their art classes that like, hey, if you can't do this science thing, you have to drop out. And you can
Yeah,
just
that
forget about
sucks.
all the art and drama stuff that you're like obviously indisputably the best in your class at. You just can't do that unless you
Mhm.
can do pre-calculus or whatever. So when I was in France, I was on the literary track, which was good and bad, I think, you know, because I don't know how much I would have gained really from like taking math or science classes over there, aside from maybe certain vocabulary things. We did like a French literature, English class, and then also Spanish and also Italian.
That's dope.
And
So you're just
yeah, it was really
very like
cool.
literature of like all these different countries.
And
Like,
it's so normal. Like in the absolutely free public education system in France, you don't have to pay any money for your kid to know 3 languages by the time they're 17 or 18. That's like
that's dope.
normal. Whereas like
That's
I tell
dope.
people in the US that I speak 3 languages and they're like, what that's insane, dude. Like how could you possibly like what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be like giving a lecture at Brown?
Yeah.
People don't believe it. People think it's insane. And it's like literally leave the US. Like you don't have to walk more than a block to meet somebody who speaks 3 languages.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
But
Like
also being
for
in a
us.
literary track in the French high school, I was in an Italian class and I had never taken Italian before. And like my name is Italian and they would like make fun of me for not knowing it. And it's like, what do you
Oh, I
expect,
see.
dude? Like y'all are in year 3. I've never heard these words.
Yeah, like it's not handed down through my DNA, like the language.
Yeah, like my host sister, like the girl that was my age in the host family that I was taking these classes with, she told me that I sounded like Brad Pitt in
Oh my
Inglourious
god.
Bastards when he tries to speak Italian and he's like arrivederci. Like that's what I
Oh
sounded
my
like to these
god.
people.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was cool though. It was a great opportunity to learn, and like I hope that anybody who's interested in learning foreign languages in the U.S. like it's not an absolute requirement, but it really gets you so much farther in way less time to be able to live in a place where you have the option and the opportunity to just stop speaking English. That's
That
what it
sounds
takes.
fucking refreshing.
It's like sink or swim, you know, like you got to drop
Yeah.
yourself into a completely disorienting environment where you have no choice but to pick it up. It's like dropping the baby bird out of the nest and then it flies.
Yeah. Did you ever face challenges of like wanting to speak another language, but like people speak English to you because you're American?
That was more of an issue in Germany than in France. Like
Oh, okay.
the stereotypes of like French people being bad at English or like having really thick accents or whatever. I think that it comes from like there's a certain pride over their like literary history, and I don't know, they really feel like they're the most, to an extent, there exists and like the cultural unconscious over there that like they are the lingua franca, they are the like first ever like the most taught language in the world. Before English it was
Oh,
French, you know, and like
yeah.
the language of colonialism before British English became the language of colonialism. And they still kind of operate that way where it's like if you are in France, and it's perfectly logical, like if you are in France, like you have to learn French to get
Mhm.
anywhere, and people won't give you the time of day otherwise, unless it happens to be a person who's really excited to practice English. Whereas in Germany, and also they like hate Americans, like I mean they don't, but they're critical of America for I think the right reasons. Like
Mhm.
we are deeply undereducated. We are overconfident and undereducated because of the economic like hegemony that the country enforces around the world. In Germany, they have a little bit more of a romantic view of Americanism.
Mm.
Americanism being like American culture. They really romanticize it, and they like we really haven't had a reckoning yet in mainstream German culture in the same way that we have in France. Like Germans are still excited to talk about like, oh, you're American. Do you listen to the Strokes? Like, oh, you're American. Do you listen to Arctic
Oh, I see.
Monkeys? And it's like, yeah, dude, for sure. Let's talk about it. And they're like psyched, you know? So Germans are excited to practice English. They're typically better at it, like on average. And so because of that, yeah, it's like oftentimes when I'd be trying to speak German, I'd be trying to maintain immersion, people would just start talking to me in English because they know English really well. And people just want to like make things easy for you.
Yeah.
Whatever language is going to create the path of least resistance, whether it's the French person keeping in French or the German person being accommodating to you by switching to English, they're just trying to make everything easy for everybody and like not make a stressful situation. But it's like, I need the stress. Like I feed off of it.
Yeah.
And the
Like
only
I
way
want
out
to
is
grow.
through. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would have to constantly like remind people, and it was situationally dependent on the relationship. I would often have to remind people like, hey, I really need to practice German, so let's stick with this.
That makes sense. Yeah, you have to like say it for them. Yeah, that's how I felt about Japan too. When I went to Japan, I felt the same. Like a lot of Japanese people like romanticize American culture.
Yeah, they're so excited to have the
So
opportunity to practice
yeah,
English
they're
with you.
so excited about like meeting an American and like talking to one, and like they want to practice their English, and like they think it's cool that you're American, and they're like, oh, America, it's so big, there's so much room. And like I got that a lot. Like people think it's like this big place with like there's so many opportunities, like there's so much room and everything. And like I find it, I had to like speak Japanese, like I had to like say I wanted to speak Japanese for them because obviously I look different. So it's like they would just start speaking to me in English, like obviously.
They're gonna assume
So-
you don't know any Japanese. Probably.
Exactly, which
Yeah.
a lot of people don't. A lot of people who go there, they maybe don't know it. You know, they're just like a tourist or something.
So that's so cool that you got to go to Japan. When were you there?
So I was there in like 2015 for like 3 weeks, like during
Nice.
the summer, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you ever want to
Yeah.
go back?
I would definitely want to go back because I love it there. I think it's like an awesome country. And like I had like the reverse culture shock thing where like when I
Coming
came back, yeah, like when I
it's
came back
mask
to
off.
the US, I was like, this is so weird.
Yeah, like now you
Like-
really realize that it kind of sucks here.
Yeah, in a certain way. Yeah. In a certain way, like I think the biggest difference was like how people acted. I think in Japan there's a standard of like politeness and like courtesy that like everyone has. In the US it's more like what's up? Okay, man. And I found that like jarring at first when I got back. Like
Yeah, I had a reverse culture shock with a certain aspect of German culture that is often called like the German stare. And I think this
Okay.
is true with a lot of like North European cultures, like certainly in Scandinavia, from what I've heard. The amount of time that it is socially normal and like not necessarily impolite to just look at someone
hmm,
like a stranger, like on a bus or like on the street or in passing or something, like in Germany, people will just look at you and it doesn't even mean anything. They're just there. They're just present. They're just in the environment. They're just perceiving the space around them and you're in it and they're looking at the person that's near them. It's not flirting. It's not an assault. They're not judging you. They're not like criticizing your shoe game. They're just not afraid of people around them. And a lot of people really get uncomfortable with that over there.
hmm,
I acclimated to it pretty quickly. And like, you know, you kind of have to assume everybody's best intentions, like, oh, this person isn't like judging me or like being xenophobic or whatever. They're just looking at me, you know, and people like warn me about this in advance. But then coming back to specifically the West Coast and specifically the Bay Area, where people are so like blinders on, like if
yeah.
you're on a bus, people will pretend they don't see you there. Like people, and
Yeah.
because they assume that that's what you would prefer. They assume that that's the polite thing, is to not be acknowledged, because like looking at somebody is like fucking with somebody in
It
the West
is,
Coast.
dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. And so when I got so used to like the German stare and like the prolonged period of time in which it is like socially acceptable to look at somebody, I got used to that. And then coming back over here, it's like, you know, on BART in SF or like just on Muni or just like walking around on the street, like, why are we so afraid of people? Like, why are people so terrified at being perceived? Why was I raised and socialized to be so terrified of being perceived? To an extent, you know, I haven't fully unlearned it because it's so deeply ingrained in me.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I
that
feel
was
like
a weird thing.
yeah, it reminds me of like babies, you know, like when you look at a baby and they're
Babies will
like,
just look at you
looking-
and they'll just like
Yeah.
wave sometimes.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like so. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and because they haven't learned shame, they haven't learned to be
Yeah.
ashamed of looking at people or being looked at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. That's cool. Well, what do you think your favorite country is in Europe, or your favorite place? And answer that first, then like, what's your favorite like place in general? Like,
Yeah, I think my favorite place might be Berlin.
mhm.
Yeah, because like that was my entire motivation to learn German. It's like when I did a semester of living in France, I was like in the countryside, and then I had an opportunity to visit that host family's previous exchange student, who was like a girl who lived in Berlin. And so we all visited Berlin, and I went with them, and it was like so amazing. I was like maybe 16 or 17 at the time, and it was this girl's friend's birthday, and we were able to just like go clubbing and just like be at clubs, like drinking, like not even like crazy raging, just like hanging out in like adult society, going to where the music was, going to where people were dancing, and like just being out and like a part of the scene at night was so cool to me. And it was like my first exposure to it. And so the first time that I visited Berlin, I was like, okay, this is what I have to do now. Like I have to learn German so that I can live in Berlin. And that was my initial motivation. And when I was living in Germany for a year, I was kind of on the opposite end of it, but I would be taking like 8 12-hour bus rides to visit Berlin, like whenever I could get the time off school to do it.
Okay.
And yeah, I tried to like enmesh myself in the culture there as much as I could, like make friends, like make connections. And I was doing comedy at open mics and like bars there, doing stand up. And there's totally like a path like there for English speakers, even people who don't learn German. In Berlin, especially, it's like kind of like the joke there is that like nobody ever speaks German here. Everybody speaks
That's
English because they
funny.
come from all over,
That's
and
crazy.
Americans especially. Yeah, and I really love it. But over time, I didn't have the same relationship with Paris at first because of all the like things that people say about how Parisians are so cold and distant. They won't have anything to do with you, especially if you're American. They don't give you the time of day. Like there's some surface level aspect to which that is true, even if you do learn French. But I think that I really broke through that. And what it took was confidence. Like it really came down to confidence. It's like you have to be able to look at any like Parisian on the street in Paris and know that like nothing that they think about you will do anything. Like
Yeah.
their opinion of you is nothing. Like they mean nothing. They're like French people are fucked up for their own reasons, you know, just like Americans are. And you have to be completely impervious to it. And once you remove that fear of being judged by a cultured French person, then you really have nothing to lose, and you can like just be and socialize and like make friends and make connections and just like enjoy the space around you. I showed up to a bar in Paris for somebody's birthday party, and I didn't even know this guy. And I hung out there. There were charcuterie boards out the wazoo. The spread was insane, and the bar staff would just periodically refresh the charcuterie boards with new stuff, like
Wow.
new cheeses,
Oh my
as we were like
god.
picking away at it.
Hmm.
It was so cool, and that cost me nothing. Like I didn't
Yeah.
even like I might have bought like one drink, but I didn't have to. Like I could have just like showed up, talked to people, eaten free food, and left. It was so cool. And like once you have to prepare yourself mentally to be ready to walk into the situations and feel like you belong there and feel like people are excited to have you there because they want to meet you, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like I am really interested in going back to Paris because I want to spend more time there with the mentality that I now have. But also I feel like there's so much in Berlin that I didn't get to do. Like I want to spend more time doing stand up there. I want to make more friends there. I want to see more of it. I want to I still haven't gotten to Berghain, you know, the notorious club that's like impossible to get into, and the
Is that in
bouncers.
Paris?
It's in Berlin.
Oh, in
It's
Berlin.
like
Okay.
the deep house techno mecca,
Oh wow.
the
Okay.
capital of
That's
like
crazy.
electronic music in planet Earth. Yeah.
Hmm.
And the whole meme there is the bouncers will turn anybody away for anything, especially if you speak English, especially if you're talkative. Like the thing to do in line at Berghain is don't talk, wear all black, keep to yourself. Even if you showed up with people, don't let the bouncers see you talking to the people that you came with in line. Just be
Wow.
like totally minding your own business, static, like stoic, gothic, and they'll let you in. I was turned away because I was wearing boots. Turns out that's against the rules. I didn't get the memo.
Oh.
I checked the
Okay.
website afterward, and it turns out that is against the rules. I guess I get it because it's like a dance floor, you know. But
Yeah.
like, it's like a goth club basically. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna show
So
up
you
in my
would think
boots.
that people would wear that.
Yeah, but then like as I'm walking through the line, I'm looking at people's shoes and it's like, oh, everyone knew this but me. And like it
And you're
actually,
just like, oh.
I was actually turned away for a good reason, a logical reason that I could have preempted, and it actually was my fault. It wasn't just the
Mhm,
bouncers being like super discriminatory,
for
Uh,
sure.
yeah. So yeah, Berlin might be my favorite place, but I'm open to Paris eventually reaching that same place and like matching it in my mind. But there's so
That's
much that I
dope.
haven't seen. I didn't get a lot of time in Prague, but I thought it was so cool and much more affordable than Paris or Berlin. And I'd love to go to Japan. Never have.
Yeah, Japan's really cool. Um, yeah, I'd love to go to Europe. That's like where I want to go next, definitely. Like for some reason Italy is like on the top of my list, then like Sweden is on the top of my list. Like I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, any country, I mean, I'd be happy to go to Europe.
You want to like hang out with Echo 2K and Blade
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait till I go to Europe. Like, I don't know, someday soon, I guess.
Would you want to like work on like music out there, or like what would you have any sort of like professional aspirations, or are you just trying to see the sights?
I mean, eventually I'd like to maybe work there or like live there for like a few months just to get an experience. That's like more than just a vacation.
Yeah, like
That's
make
sort of
progress
like my
learning the
goal.
language.
Yeah, yeah. So that's sort of what I want to do. And maybe I could set up something there where I could like be like go there intermittently for like certain periods throughout the year and
Line
then
up
like
some
come back here.
shows, line up some dates,
Yeah,
have like a minor tour.
exactly. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Cause I still love the US, but like I definitely need more experiences outside the US, like, you know?
Yeah,
So
and
I
you've
don't
totally
know.
prepared yourself. Like you set yourself up to be able to do that. Like I think that with the level of French that you know, when you got to France, you would get to fluency really quickly.
Okay, that's so yeah. Cause I
Yeah, and it
love
would
the
just
language.
accelerate
Like
from there.
I love how it sounds and it's like fun to like
Yeah.
learn and to read. So yeah.
What do you like to read in French?
I haven't read too much, but I like to read. Honestly, now I've been watching YouTube videos in French. Like that's sort of like my main method of like trying to learn the language now. I do have like some practice books with like vocabulary and like paragraphs that have like short stories like for the purpose of like learning the language,
Oh, nice.
which
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've been like going through that a little bit. So.
What French YouTubers do you like?
The guy that I sent you, I forgot his name, but I sent you
Yeah.
like one video. That guy's like really good. And
Okay, cool.
there's like a few ladies that I watch too and like some other videos. But
Yeah, one
I
that
don't
I think
remember
is
the names.
cool is
So.
like Les Recettes Pompettes, and it's just like this
I've heard of
professional.
that one. I think I've
Yeah,
heard of that one.
it's
Yeah.
this chef in France who he brings on a celebrity, like quote unquote celebrity, like a French celebrity, brings up a celebrity guest every episode, and they have to make a recipe together. But at certain points in the recipe, the step is take a shot. So they get progressively more fucked up, like as they're cooking. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we're almost ready to wrap up. Is there anything else that you want to mention? Or
I guess I just want to say that like I'm so excited for the world to open up, comedy venues to open up, like get on stage, be doing comedy, going to open mics, booking shows, and meeting people doing it, because I've been doing it as best I can, like trying to stay on it, but like in a completely siloed off way, and like in a sort of like isolated way where like there's only me and like the few like the collaborator that I live with and like you, and that's like it,
And like the comedy show people sometimes.
Yeah, I'm like I want to like meet comedy people. Like I feel like that's something that I didn't totally get to in New York, is like making friends with other comedians. I was really like integrating myself in like a music scene kind of. Like I wasn't really performing music except for I guess karaoke, like at like as many nights out of the week as I could in New York, and all my friends were like musicians because I just like didn't really connect with the comedians because I wasn't there long enough to meet the like really make friends. But I want to put more effort into connecting with people trying to do the same thing as me out here.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait for the same thing. So
even though people tell me that that's really hard to do, because the stereotype is that everyone in LA is like super out for themselves, like not interested in getting to know you unless they can get something out of knowing you.
Oh, I see.
Supposedly,
it's not like that.
But. Yeah, so I'm prepared for whatever social barriers are going to come up to like meet the real ones.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I hope that it's easy to, I hope there's like networking events or like meetups or like something that will like be good for like producing like relationships and stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna be getting on the
That'd be dope.
Meetup app, if not just for language exchange.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that's it. And then I also wanted to ask, like, are we going to do like another comedy show?
Definitely. I don't have a date
Okay.
for it right now, and we weren't able to this month because of some
Yeah,
reasons I don't know if you know about. But we can
I
talk about it
don't know if
later.
I know about. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, but next month I really would like to get back on it. Can't give an exact date, but it's probably going to be on a Saturday at 7 p.m. again, sometime during the
Yeah,
week.
that's like the best time usually.
Definitely.
So, cool. Yeah. So, all right, we're gonna end this episode. Thanks for watching episode 19 with Gianni Magna. This was Brain Dump.
One of my
dumped
favorite
our
Tegan and
brains.
Sarah songs, 19.
Woo!
Woo!
All right. So thank you guys. We'll see you next Sunday. Have a good week.
Yeah.